Why must high-voltage power grids be shut down during storms? This power tower, under the force of the fierce wind, had its insulators swaying violently. And during that motion, the connections holding them in place snap apart. The falling high-voltage cables struck the metal frame and sparked on contact. This wasn't a movie scene. It truly happened in 2018 in Paradise, California. The high-voltage grid ignited the forest, burning through more than 1,000 hectares and taking 85 lives in the disaster. In October 2025, director Paul Greengrass adapted this tragedy into the film The Lost Bus. The story begins on an ordinary afternoon in the small mountain town of Paradise in northeastern California. School bus driver Kevin was doing what he always did, driving children home after class. Because the town sits deep among the hills, 90% of its roads are carved along mountain slopes. The winding curves and steep inclines made driving here a challenge. Even after decades behind the wheel, Kevin never dared to press the accelerator fully. At every turn, he slowed just enough to avoid a head-on collision with oncoming cars. That careful habit made him the children's most trusted driver. After passing through a stretch of forest, Kevin reached the first stop, where parents had been waiting. Once he confirmed each child had someone to meet them, he started the engine and headed for the next stop. An hour later, he delivered every child safely home, right on schedule. Satisfied that no one was left behind, he turned the bus around and drove back to the depot. Just as he returned to the dispatch station, Kevin accidentally heard a fire warning on the radio. It turned out the town hadn't seen rain for over 200 days. For a region thick with dry vegetation, that was a dangerous sign. Still, Kevin didn't think much of it. After submitting his report and clocking out, Kevin spoke with Ruby, the dispatcher. Because his father's medical bills had plunged the family deep into debt, he wanted to take on an extra route to earn a bit more money. But bus drivers were limited to one route each to prevent fatigue-related accidents. Kevin tried to plead his case, yet Ruby refused. However, Ruby agreed to let Kevin keep driving for a while, and if any long-distance bus driver retired, she would find a way to transfer him to that route. Disappointed, Kevin drove his old pickup home. However, this was not the worst part. As soon as he stepped inside, his mother told him that his son Sean hadn't gone to school. Already upset, Kevin grew even angrier when he heard that. He confronted Sean, demanding to know why he had skipped class. Sean tried to explain that he wasn't feeling well, but Kevin, blinded by anger, didn't believe him. Instead of showing concern, he harshly scolded his son. The argument filled the small house with even more tension. After dinner, exhausted, Kevin lay on his bed and fell into a deep sleep. However, around 6 in the morning, strong winds began sweeping through the forest 80 miles away from the town. A passing driver noticed flames among the trees and called it in. The duty officer immediately dispatched the nearest fire crews. When firefighters reached the scene, they realized the situation was dire. The blaze had already spread across several ridges. Rough estimates showed more than 100 hectares burned, and the fire was racing southwest. Seeing the mountains shrouded in thick smoke, the captain ordered his team to cut trees along the slope to create a fire break. However, before they could reach the scene, the flames had already leapt over the ridge and surged toward another mountain. Realizing the fire was out of control, the captain ordered a retreat. The situation was soon reported to the regional headquarters. Chief Martinez responded at once, mobilizing crews from 16 nearby stations. But when he arrived, his assistant delivered grim news. The blaze had traveled over 30 kilometers, scorching more than 1,000 hectares. Even worse, a second ignition point had been spotted 5 kilometers from the first. The cause of the fire was that the power company failed to shut down the high-voltage grid after receiving the wind warning, and as a result, a cable was torn apart by the strong gusts, sparking the blaze. Seeing that containment was impossible, Martinez ordered the evacuation of a settlement of more than 600 people inside the forest. He also called in aircraft to drop retardant, hoping to slow the advancing flames. By this time, news of the forest fire had already made the headlines. Although the town was far from danger, the government still issued a warning, advising residents to stay alert. After dropping the children off at school, Kevin was refueling at a gas station when he received a call from his ex-wife. It turned out Sean hadn't lied yesterday. He really had caught a cold. After realizing he had misunderstood his son, Kevin felt deeply guilty. His ex-wife, worried about Sean's condition, decided to take the boy to her place for a while, but Kevin refused. He went to the pharmacy and bought fever medicine, planning to deliver it to his son later. Just as he finished refueling and was about to head home, dispatcher Ruby called him with new instructions. She asked him to drive to the maintenance station. It turned out the school bus had a problem with its cooling system. When the temperature got too high, the engine would suddenly shut off. Kevin had requested repairs weeks earlier, but due to a shortage of parts, the school bus had never been serviced. Every time the engine overheated, he had to pull over and wait for it to cool down. Now that the parts had finally arrived, Kevin drove the bus toward the repair station. However, as he was leaving the gas station, he looked back and saw the thick smoke from the forest fire had reached the town's sky with the wind. Hearing his report, Ruby grew anxious too, but since no evacuation order had been issued, most residents assumed the fire was under control. She told Kevin to continue to the maintenance site as planned. However, the blaze spread faster than anyone expected. While firefighters were still digging fire breaks, strong southeast winds swept through the forest again. Driven by the wind, the fire surged across the land, consuming the equivalent of 80 football fields every hour. Even worse, the two separate fire zones had merged into one.
You're looking at our perimeter about like that.
Okay, let's send resources to Concal. Air tankers, engines, give him what he needs.
Copy. You got that?
Yeah.
Okay, so if we've got fire in Concal, we have to change that evac warning to an order.
Do it.
Copy.
New containment lines, Jordan Hill Road.
When the reports came in, Chief Martinez immediately realized the fire was beyond containment. They couldn't stop it alone. He sent emergency evacuation orders to all nearby towns. Not far from the front lines, another small town had already been engulfed. As soon as they discovered the fire, the residents began to evacuate. But the fire was moving faster than anyone imagined. Within seconds, it swallowed the town. Fortunately, a rescue team arrived just in time, preventing an even greater tragedy. Meanwhile, Kevin was driving toward the repair station. Halfway there, his ex-wife called again, saying she was already on the road and would take Sean with her today. Irritated, Kevin argued with her over the phone. Frustrated and distracted, he hung up and turned the truck around, deciding to bring the medicine home first. He had barely driven a few minutes when a message crackled through the radio. It was an evacuation order from Ruby. The fire had reached the outskirts of town and all buses were to head to an evacuation site 30 kilometers away in Chico. Hearing this, Kevin quickly mapped out a route in his mind. His house was in that direction, so he could stop by to pick up his mother and son before heading to the evacuation point. He immediately called home. He told Sean to keep the radio tuned to Channel 7 and to evacuate with his grandmother if the fire spread closer. He promised he was already driving toward them. But just as Kevin hung up, Ruby's voice came over the radio again, this time with an urgent plea for help. When the evacuation order was announced, the school had notified all parents, but 22 children were still left behind because their families couldn't reach them in time. The dispatch station had no available buses to send, and Ruby was checking if any driver was still nearby. All other buses were far from the Eastern District. It would take too long to get there. Hearing Ruby's desperate voice, Kevin hesitated. His home was northwest, but the school was east. If he went to the school, he wouldn't have time to save his family. But if he didn't, more than 20 children would be trapped. After a moment of painful thought, Kevin picked up the radio, learning that Kevin was still in the Eastern District.
963 base, I can get him.
Listen, if you get those kids out, you will have done well.
I'm on my way. Copy that. Have him lined up.
Ruby was a bit angry, but didn't make a fuss about it. She told him to go to the school first, get the children out, and then meet everyone at the assembly point near the dispatch station. Kevin quickly recalculated the route. Though the school was over 10 kilometers away, he knew a shortcut that could get him there in 20 minutes. At the same time, the fire had spread to the outskirts of the town. Thick, heavy smoke wrapped around the entire area, and the sky turned a dull, brownish gray, looking like the end of the world. After a tense 20-minute drive, Kevin finally reached the school. Seeing the familiar yellow bus, Teacher Mary immediately gathered the children and led them on board. Once Kevin confirmed everyone was accounted for, he started the engine. But when he tried to contact headquarters through the radio, he found the signal was dead. As frustration filled the bus, he glanced in the mirror and saw flames blazing across the opposite ridge. The road ahead was jammed with cars, moving at a crawl. Back at the dispatch center, Ruby was frantically trying to reach Kevin, but no one responded. It turned out that the town's radio communication tower had been destroyed in the fire. As Ruby struggled to decide what to do, an alarm went off inside the building. She turned around and saw the fire racing down the hill. The Eastern District was already burning. With no other choice, she and the remaining staff were forced to evacuate. In the town of Chico, authorities had set up a temporary command center. But with too many departments involved, coordination quickly collapsed, and the entire headquarters fell into chaos. Martinez carefully calculated the fire's progression and realized that at its current speed, Paradise would be completely engulfed within 60 minutes. The top priority now was to clear the roads and evacuate all 36,000 residents. He ordered the mayor to use every available resource and complete the evacuation within 30 minutes. He also instructed the power company's supervisor to shut down all circuits to prevent fallen power lines from triggering secondary disasters. At the fire line, over 100 fire trucks and more than 3,000 firefighters were battling the inferno. With air support from firefighting planes, the flames in the northwest were finally brought under control, but the fire in the east remained fierce, completely beyond containment. Meanwhile, Kevin was still waiting to evacuate along the planned route, but with thousands of vehicles on the road, traffic was paralyzed for dozens of kilometers. Under normal conditions, it would take him only 30 minutes to reach the dispatch station. Now, with the gridlock, even 3 hours wouldn't be enough. Kevin tried calling Sean, telling him to take his grandmother and leave first, but the cell towers had already been destroyed by the fire, cutting off all communication in town. Then, something unexpected happened.
Coming down!
Oh my God! Oh my God!
We can make it! Going left! Down here!
Kids, hold on! Do something!
A live power line snapped and fell across the road. Luckily, Kevin reacted fast and swerved the bus just in time to avoid it. Seeing sparks flying, other drivers panicked, slamming their brakes and swerving wildly to escape. But the more people ignored order, the worse the chaos became. Within minutes, cars were jammed in every direction, completely blocking all routes. Kevin stepped out of the bus to see what was happening. At the intersection, he spotted a traffic officer waving frantically, trying to manage the mess. Kevin told him there were over 20 children inside the school bus and asked him to let them pass first. But the officer insisted that fire engines had to take priority. Watching the panic and confusion around him, Kevin could no longer stand by. He ran into the line of cars himself to find the source of the blockage. It didn't take him long to spot the issue. The opposite lane was filled with vehicles trying to turn around, blocking everyone else. The only way to restore movement was to clear that lane first. Kevin stopped traffic at the intersection, guided the opposite vehicles through safely, then directed the fire trucks forward. Under his quick coordination, the gridlocked highway finally began to move. Teacher Mary started the bus and drove the children through the intersection. But when Kevin finally reached the rendezvous point, he was met with devastation. The entire dispatch station had been consumed by flames, and all staff had already evacuated. Seeing the destruction, worry gripped his heart. His home was only 8 kilometers from the station. If this area was burning, his house was likely in danger too. He didn't know whether Sean had managed to escape with his grandmother. Mary unfolded a map and told Kevin their only option now was to drive 30 kilometers west to Chico. Without hesitation, Kevin started the engine and sped toward the evacuation zone. Fortunately, the road ahead was clear this time. At the command center in Chico, Martinez was directing the mass evacuation. In the past 30 minutes, over 8,000 people had been evacuated, but more than 30,000 were still trapped inside the fire zone. The entire town of Paradise was now swallowed by flames. Hearing the latest report, Martinez realized the fire was completely out of control and immediately changed his strategy. Meanwhile, Kevin's bus passed through a residential area. The scene was horrific. Houses on both sides of the road were ablaze. Firefighters tried to contain the flames, but every time they extinguished one, the spreading inferno reignited it. Some people fleeing on foot were burned while trying to escape. In desperation, others began hijacking cars in panic. The chaos spiraled further out of control. Kevin's bus was soon targeted. A few armed looters pounded on the door, demanding that he stop. In the chaos, Kevin turned onto a narrow side road. Although he managed to shake off the thugs, they still got lost in the thick smoke. Fortunately, he spotted a park sign by the roadside. He remembered this place. Behind the park was a narrow path that connected back to the main highway. They could take that shortcut to safety. After hours of driving through heat and smoke, the air inside the bus had become unbearable. A few children began struggling to breathe. If they didn't get help soon, the heavy smoke could cause them to suffocate. Mary looked around for water to make makeshift masks, but there wasn't a single bottle left on board. Then Kevin saw a small convenience store just ahead. He was about to get out and check for supplies, but Mary stopped him. Kevin was the only driver they had. If something happened to him, the children would be in grave danger. Mary went to the store alone. On the shelf, she found a box of bottled water, but she didn't realize that behind the store was a gas station. As she carried the water back toward the bus, the spreading fire ignited the fuel tanks. Fortunately, Mary returned just in time and wasn't caught in the explosion. Kevin also did not delay. He immediately drove the school bus away from the scene. Moments later, the gas station erupted in a massive blast, and leaking fuel ignited the surrounding area. Meanwhile, Ruby had arrived at the evacuation site in Chico. Anxious parents were already gathered there, waiting for news. Ruby told them the children had been safely loaded onto the bus, but the bus was now trapped inside the fire zone and had lost contact with headquarters. She reported the situation, and the rescue teams promised to alert them as soon as the bus was found. When the parents learned the bus was missing, panic spread through the crowd. While Ruby tried to calm everyone down, Kevin had reached Roy Road. If they could continue for just a few more kilometers, they would rejoin the main highway. But the condition of the narrow road was terrible, with parts of it already collapsed. Kevin had no choice but to drive slowly and carefully. At one intersection, they came across a few hikers walking toward the fire zone. Because of the earlier encounter with looters, Kevin didn't dare stop. Then a man stepped into the road, signaling for them to halt. Kevin thought he needed help, but the man warned him that the road ahead was already on fire and completely impassable. The man explained that he and his group were from a camping club and that not far from there was a canyon that might provide shelter. He suggested Kevin and the children come with them, but the man wasn't sure if the fire had already reached the canyon either, and the flames were closing in from behind. Learning that the main road was already burning, Kevin felt lost for a moment. He stopped the bus and climbed a nearby hill to look around. What he saw made his heart sink. The forest in every direction was ablaze, surrounding them completely. There was no way out. Luckily, the spot where they had stopped was relatively clear of vegetation. As Kevin struggled to decide what to do, he suddenly noticed a faint light flickering in the northwest. He quickly realized this could be their only chance. He ran back to the bus and told Mary what he had discovered. Kevin believed the light to the northwest was sunlight breaking through. He reasoned that since the fire had burned from that direction, it must have passed through recently, meaning the area might now be safe. Their best option, he said, was to stay put, wait for the flames to sweep past, and then drive against the wind through the burned zone while the fire moved the other way. Mary thought his idea sounded too risky. If Kevin's guess was wrong, they would all burn alive inside the bus. She remembered the hikers' words about the canyon and suggested they take the children there instead. But Kevin refused. Outside, the smoke was too thick. The children wouldn't last 2 minutes out there, and once they entered the fire zone on foot, they would be consumed in less than 3 minutes. All they could do now was wait for the fire to pass. Although unsure if Kevin's speculation was correct, there was no better option now. While they waited, Kevin told Mary to cut his shirt into small pieces, soak them with water, and use them as makeshift masks for the children. Then he took some tape from the storage compartment and sealed every vent in the bus to keep the smoke out. The air inside quickly grew hot and heavy. Looking out at the black smoke surrounding them, everyone inside felt suffocated with fear. The children trembled, and all Mary could do was hold them and whisper that it would be okay. Suddenly, sparks from the wind ignited dry grass near the road, and the children screamed. Kevin grabbed the fire extinguisher and rushed out to put it out. But just as he finished, flames erupted again, even closer this time. Kevin knew this was their moment. He jumped back into the driver's seat and started the bus, preparing to break through the fire. But at this critical moment, the bus malfunctioned. The engine was too hot to start. Kevin ran to the front, lifted the hood, and ripped off the protective collar from the engine. It roared back to life. Kevin slammed the accelerator, driving the bus straight toward the wall of fire. Around them, the forest was a sea of flames. Mary hugged the children tightly, trying to shield them from the heat. Kevin kept his eyes on the road, alert to any sudden danger. The bus reached the center of the fire zone. Outside the windows, there was nothing but fire. Kevin didn't dare stop. He pressed harder on the pedal and charged forward. When the bus finally emerged into a clear area, Kevin's heart, which had been hanging in his throat, finally relaxed. He rolled down the windows to let the smoke out. Mary took a deep breath and immediately checked on the children. Thankfully, all 22 of them were safe. Back at the evacuation site, parents were still waiting in despair. They had questioned every rescue team, but no one had news of the missing bus. They asked every rescue team, but no one knew anything about the bus. Just when everyone began to fear that something had happened to the children, Kevin's bus finally appeared. Seeing that all the kids were safe, the crowd erupted into thunderous applause. At the evacuation zone, Kevin found his paralyzed mother. It turned out that while he was rescuing the children, his ex-wife had arrived at their home and taken both Sean and his mother to safety. Since Sean had fallen ill, she had already taken him to the hospital. Learning that both were safe, Kevin finally let out a long sigh of relief. After 2 exhausting weeks, the wildfire was finally contained. The disaster became the most destructive fire in California's history. 85 people lost their lives in the fire, and the direct economic damage reached over $10 billion. The power company responsible faced 84 federal charges. Between lawsuits, fines, and compensation, it paid $13.5 billion to the victims' families and the affected residents, recreating a real-life disaster with terrifying authenticity. The film heightens the tension while preserving its humanistic core. Well, that's all for today's share. See you next time.